How did Medvedev go from paying lip service to freedom and prancing around with Steve Jobs to hyperventilating about nuclear apocalypse and sporting a macho leather jacket and inspecting factories in a leather trench coat that looks like it was last worn by you-know-who? Here is Medvedev silently drawing an incomplete symbol I don't need to describe. And don't think for a moment he has no idea what he's doing. He is raving about other countries being fascist while cosplaying fascism himself. So what is this? What is going on? Well, Medvedev was broken by the Putin regime and fell into a trap. And his trap is apocalyptic clowning as self-preservation. When Medvedev got power from Putin, as docile and compliant as he was, he began to gain independence. Having power pushed him to differentiate himself from Putin, even if he was scared of that. Have a look at Putin attacking the UN resolution on Libya, from which Russia abstained, as a call for a crusade. And have a look at Medvedev putting Putin down for fueling a clash of civilizations and using the word crusade.
Ни в коем случае недопустимо использовать выражения, которые по сути ведут к столкновению цивилизаций, типа крестовых походов.
Now Medvedev must atone for going off script as president of Russia in order to save his neck. Medvedev's predicament is thorny because he is 13 years younger than Putin. Putin is in his 70s, Medvedev is in his 50s. And that in itself is a threat to Putin. And being a threat to Putin, it's a threat to Medvedev's neck. And this gets worse for Medvedev because Putin has a fear and a fantasy. Putin's fear is that he'll end up like Gaddafi, in whose demise he sees Medvedev as implicated. Putin's fantasy is that he should live forever, and that's expressed in Putin's thought that there ain't no point in the world existing without Russia, and ain't no point in Russia existing without Putin. Now let's look at Medvedev's solution to lock himself into endless apocalyptic clowning as self-preservation. Medvedev's theatrics began before the full-scale invasion of Ukraine. In 2021, he wrote an unsavory and hysterical hit piece on Ukraine. And unlike the quivering Narishkin at the pre-invasion meeting of Putin's Security Council, Medvedev was already prepped to sing siren songs about Putin's plans. During the war, Medvedev's language became ever more nauseatingly theatrical. A year ago, he warned us in the West that the horsemen of the apocalypse were already en route.
Всадники апокалипсиса уже в пути.
Recently, a Ukrainian comedian responded to Medvedev saying that his horsemen of the apocalypse were still en route because Russia's roads are so shit.
Апокалипсиса.
Engaging in this ritual begins to take on a logic of its own. You begin to believe the role to avoid thinking of yourself as a clown. But still, Medvedev is not bloodthirsty. He is empty. For him, raving on about submerging the Anglo-Saxons in nuclear ash is actually a way of hiding. But I wouldn't have made this video if I didn't feel that Medvedev's theatrics also had something important to teach us about the regime. Medvedev's ravings are actually a lavatorial but faithful statement of the ideology of the Putin regime. If we strip off the rhetorical clothes, we get Putin's ideology, which I'll analyze in a forthcoming video with all of its mystical and fascist elements, from might is right to the West will collapse to Russia has no borders to there is no point in the world existing without Russia. Russian commentator Vladimir Pastukhov is right to point out that there is no substantive conflict between Medvedev's words and the regime. Putin is a more sincere and measured Medvedev, Dugin is a more intellectual Medvedev, Patrushev is a more committed Medvedev, and a moderate like Kiriyenko is a more bureaucratic Medvedev. Medvedev's fake nuttiness reveals the realer nuttiness of the regime, but it also teaches us about something more than the regime. Medvedev offers us a meditation on how easily human beings come to think or say that history's questions need to be answered with fire. What we get wrong is that we see political actors who do bad as either well-meaning but misguided or as monsters. Calling them misguided, we forget the destructiveness of human beings. Calling them monsters, we simply give up on explaining them. Explaining extreme political actors teaches us to see all political actors more clearly, including our own. It teaches us to watch out for a slide into destructiveness. For instance, as with post-truth populists, for a slide into destructiveness of democratic institutions. Understanding politics doesn't just fulfill curiosity, it teaches us to make the bad guys lose. Central here is telling apart domestic political problems from malign foreign interference. And if you are new to me, you must watch this video about the unexpected effects of Russian propaganda in the West.